Well, Michigan is known for a lot of things, but it's becoming more to be known as a great state for breweries all across every region of Michigan. Joining us to talk about that and more is the executive director of the Michigan Brewers Guild, Scott Graham, on today's edition of the Megacast. Scott, thanks for being with us today.
Hi, Tyler. Nice to see you today, virtually.
Yes, nice to see you as well. There's over 400 or just close to 400 breweries in the state of Michigan, and Michigan ranks sixth in the nation in terms of breweries, microbreweries, and brew pubs. What about the state of Michigan makes it such a great hub for brewing beer and being creative in doing so?
Well, I think when you look at it all, it comes back to the beer community, and of course, there's no beer community without breweries. But all the people involved, there are no breweries if there aren't a bunch of people drinking beer, right? You can make the beer, but we can't drink it all ourselves. So the greater community that's evolved to me is the greatest part of it. I know lots of people who have made friends in breweries and at beer festivals that have become, real special friendships. People have gotten engaged, met a future spouse and gotten engaged. But I would say early on, so the Michigan Brewers Guild is a nonprofit trade association, and our basic mission is to promote and protect the industry here. And when we all organized 25 years ago, we're celebrating our 25th anniversary this year. But when the guild was organized, what everybody really had in common, the 50 or so breweries that were around then, was everybody wanted to sell more of their own beer. And so, what better way to promote everybody's beer than to have a beer festival? And we organized the very first summer beer festival, which was actually in Livonia that year. But by doing that, it kind of took this young industry where people were busy and maybe looking at other breweries and maybe forming a friendship here or there, but it gave everybody a common project to work on together. And I think that helped build early community to work on something that wasn't anyone in particular. It was everybody, and it was something else. And I think looking back, that helped us build the community. Um, and as it's developed, like I mentioned, it's more than just the breweries. It's suppliers, it's people who love beer, it's people who are learning about local beer. It's the whole thing.
And so, how much of a factor did that community play in maintaining the livelihood of these breweries across the state of Michigan and the brewing industry in Michigan, given that there was such an impact on these often small businesses as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, COVID was dramatic for everybody. And some breweries did fairly well, relatively speaking. Some it was devastating. Some are still limping and struggling, but it was a pretty dramatic occurrence. Most of the breweries have tasting rooms, right, where you can go drink your beer there. A lot of them, that's really the only place they sell their beer. You can get it to go, you can drink it there. So it was super difficult to try and figure things out and to kind of have to watch what was happening and adapt and watch more and make changes. Everybody had that struggle. Every bar, restaurant, all kinds of businesses did. And breweries certainly weren't excluded. Um, I'd say it feels kind of like we're coming out on the other end a little bit now, but I think that there's still lingering effects to be sure. And of course, we're facing supply chain issues, increased costs, whether it's food or beer ingredients, uh, pretty extreme difficulties in maintaining a full staff. There are lots of places that aren't open their full hours at their tasting room or restaurant that they were pre-COVID because they can't effectively staff.
We're joined by Scott Graham. He's the executive director of the Michigan Brewers Guild, joining us on today's edition of the Megacast. You can learn more information by visiting mibeer.com. mibeer.com for more information to find breweries in your local area or areas that you're visiting in the state of Michigan, as well as beer-related events and festivals all across the Great Lakes state. Michigan Beer, that's mibeer.com for more information. In terms of the effect that the pandemic had on these businesses, on these breweries? Are they? You mentioned that they're starting to come out the other side of it now, but would you call that them making a comeback from some of those losses as much as is possible, or is it more just they're finally maybe not so much stumbling and trying to get their footing given that crisis and are finally able to be back on their 2 feet and operate?
It's a difficult question to answer because I think um, everybody kind of got used to having to figure things out and reevaluate and figure things out. And there's really no one situation that fit everybody. It's quite a bunch of diverse individual situations. So I feel like there's still a lot of lingering uncertainty. Um, but one thing about small business people, they're optimistic and they're determined to make it through and do whatever it takes. And we have a lot of creativity in our industry. And I think we've seen that creative muscle continue to be flexed.
We're joined by Scott Graham, the executive director of the Michigan Brewers Guild, on today's edition of the Megacast. Some big news earlier on this year in terms of Michigan breweries was when Larry Bell, the owner of Bell's Brewery, had sold the Michigan brewery to a company called Lion, which owns New Belgium Brewing. What does that mean for the future of the brand of Bell's and its market here in the state of Michigan, being that it was such a local favorite for Michiganders across the board?
Well, I would defer you to somebody at Bell's for real details on what they think. But from my perspective, it doesn't change that much. I think those Bell's brands that are so loved are still great beers made locally. They're still the same people making that beer, and no doubt, the new parent company didn't buy the brewery to make major dramatic changes. I'm sure they bought it because they thought it was a great business. And I know quite a number of people that work there, and they're still there, and I think it's still a great business. Although it can be a little sad to see businesses change hands, and I think it's something that's special about the beer industry, because if you think about other products, excuse me, maybe toothpaste or potato chips or even soft drinks. When there's consolidation or purchases, most people don't even notice. And but your local beer is something that people are informed about, they feel attached to, and they have an emotional reaction to it, right? It's like I feel like I have some ownership in that brand, and it bothers me. So um, it's really a special part of the beer industry to have that kind of connection with consumers, and for consumers to have that kind of passion and feel like these brands are so much a part of their lives and the fabric and culture of what they do on a day-to-day basis. It really is a special thing.
mibeer.com to learn more information about breweries across the state of Michigan, including in your local area. That is mibeer.com for more info from the Michigan Brewers Guild. As we're joined by Scott Graham, their executive director, on today's edition of the Megacast. Big event coming up this fall in Detroit, Saturday, October 22nd, 1 to 6 p.m. It's the Detroit Fall Beer Festival. Tell us about this event and what people can learn and experience with beer in the Detroit area in October.
So we now have a roster of 5 festivals throughout the year. Excuse me, I got a little tickle in my throat. So the 5 festivals, our oldest and longest standing is our Summer Beer Festival. That was the first one we ever did, and we celebrated our 23rd festival this past summer. Of course, we had 2 years off. It would have been 25th. Things get confusing now. Is it the 23rd annual, 25th annual? Anyway, we have 2 in the fall, and one is in Marquette in September. And then we have the Detroit Fall Beer Festival, which takes place at the Eastern Market. And that's coming up on the 22nd of October. And like all of our festivals, it's about tasting beer. So we pour small samples. We have hundreds of beers. We have just over 100 breweries will be there. They're all local Michigan breweries. And these festivals, again, we were talking about community a little while ago. It's a great place to be around people. People are friendly. They're happy. They're tasting beer. They're sharing their thoughts about their beers with their friends. And it's a very welcoming and friendly environment. And it's a lot of fun for somebody who has spent years drinking local beer because different breweries will bring special beers to the festival. There will be breweries there from maybe a region or area that you don't get to, or maybe a new brewery that you haven't been to yet. But it's also a heck of a lot of fun for somebody who's just kind of learning about local beer and might not understand all the different flavors of beer. And even if you think you don't like beer, there are so many different flavors from bitter to sweet to sour, um, hoppy, and things that you might not expect, unusual ingredients in beer. It's really a great place to be around people, watch people, taste beer, and just have a nice Saturday afternoon.
Tickets are $55 per person in advance, plus some service fees, and $65 on the day of or at the gate as they are available. Again, Saturday, October 22nd at Eastern Market, the Michigan Brewers Guild Detroit Fall Beer Festival is happening. More information can be found on mibeer.com. mibeer.com. Scott, before we let you go, anything else we should know about things happening within the Michigan Brewers Guild?
Yeah, I've got something that I definitely want to talk about, and that's our 25th anniversary celebration. So, this is our 25th year as a trade association, which feels like quite a milestone for us. There are certainly organizations that have been around a lot longer than that. But one of the things that we did to commemorate it was we put together a documentary that's compiled from quite a large number of interviews with people from within the industry. And we're encouraging our brewery members to host viewing parties of the documentary. It's really fun to watch. It's engaging and interesting. And like I said, it's snippets of the story is told through interviews with lots of different people. And the other thing that we did with these interviews, because there was such rich material, we started Michigan's Great Beer State podcast to share them in longer form. They're great stories. They're fun to listen to, and even if you know the story of a brewery, every time I listen to one of them, I find things that I didn't know. So it's really a special and rich resource for those who are interested.
More information can be found, including viewing parties in your local area at mibeer.com. Scott, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Cheers.